Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us at the MarketSite studio, we have Chris Dearborn, Managing Director on Nasdaq's Market Intelligence Desk. And Chris, this is the first time I think we have done in person together in quite some time.
Since the end of the year. Actually, we hosted, the last time I did in person was your last hit of 2022.
Right, and certainly.
Here we are.
And reversal of fortune in the markets, actually stringing together some green sessions here. Of course, the question is the Fed policy starting to work on interest rates and starting to see some deflationary activity?
The NDX has been up 8 of the last 12 sessions. Today, we're down a little bit. We're down about 3%. We're rallying well off the lows. It's nice to see the market actually acting like the market. You have some negative broader macro items that kind of had the market sell off. Going into last year, for the last 6 to 8 months, bad news was good news for the stock market, right? Because everything was fighting inflation and the Fed. So everything is starting to come around. You have, retail sales that were a little lackluster, PPI was a little lackluster, and ISM was not great, right? So all of a sudden the market's starting to act like it should. When you have negative macro news, that should sell off the markets in the sectors that are impacted by it. And you're starting to see that yesterday. You're seeing that again a little bit today. And maybe it's coming to the point where, are we going to get the 5% with the Fed fund futures? And with inflation coming down a little bit, CPI at 6.5, PPI a little bit less than that, where's the real nominal rate going to be? Right now, nominal rates running about -2, 2.5% when you look at CPI versus interest rates. So with the meeting next month, is it going to be a 0.5 point or a 1/4 point? The market's betting that's going to be a 1/4 point right now. And so people are starting to act the way they should, investors are at least, that bad news is bad news and good news is good news, as opposed to what we were doing for the last 6 months, which is the inverse, right? Bad news, high, bad inflation, and everything else, markets take off because the Fed's going to slow their rate hike pace.
Right.
And that's kind of where we are right now. So hopefully once we're there, we can get back to normal.
Yeah, well, speaking of normal, right, earnings is really going to kick into gear.
We're excited about
next week,
that.
which is a good thing, because every time the market is just so focused on the macro headlines,
it's hyper-focused.
This is where, but then this is where we see lack of liquidity. This is where we see extreme moves in prices. But we're going to have some fundamental news that we have to digest. Of course, the market's going to see, okay, are we going to comp better than analyst estimates, right? Are things not as bad as they thought? And then what does guidance look like? So with that said, let's get some fresh technical levels to watch, because it could look very different by the time we're here next week.
Absolutely. So the index is trading about 11,370 as we currently speak. When I took the snapshot of the chart, it was a little bit lower than that. We're actually trading near the highs of the day. We opened at 11,345, so it's nice to see it kind of trading above the opening price. It's always a positive on the technical level. What the index did, it had a nice run, and we broke through the 200-day the moving average, and we failed. You're looking at the 100-day moving average at 11,477. The index failed there yesterday, fell down, broke through the 50-day moving average at 11,400. Two very big negative technicals. So is it a round trip going back and forth or not? So what happened was, right when we broke through the moving average, the 100-day, we hit the 23.6 Fibonacci retracement level, and that stopped it dead in its tracks at 11,600. The index and the stocks themselves are not ready to make that push yet because of what we were just saying before, waiting on the earnings, right? We were always worried about what the P is going to be. Now we got to see what the E is going to be and how that's going to move forward. So over the next couple of weeks, we got some big names, a couple of big names tonight. We have Netflix tonight, but moving forward, you got Microsoft, you've got Tesla, Comcast, Charter, Intel all next week. The week after that, you got Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, Mondelez, name a few that are out there. So it's going to move the index significantly. Will that be enough to push us through that 23.6 fib from the 52-week low or not is another question. Support is nice. If we can hold this level here higher close than where we opened, that's going to be a very good positive. Support is 11,300, then 11,200. If we fail that 11,200, we're going to go to about 10,800. We don't want to see that. All the positive good vibes that we've had for the last 2 weeks are going to be thrown out the window. Resistance is 11 at the 50-day, a little over 11,400, and then the 100-day at 11,470.
Right. Well, and of course, because of the weighting that some of these Nasdaq 100 heavyweights, so goes the index, right? So when Apple reports, it matters. Tesla, Microsoft, Alphabet. With that said, let's take a look at your chart with the constituents. What's leading the way today, or not much, but
when I took the snapshot, it was 2080. on the breadth, positive, negative. We're about 25, 75 inching our way up against a nice end-of-day rally here. Let's see if we can hold it, or is it just some short covering into the close? Meta is having a strong day. JD.com's having a strong day. Workday's having a strong day. All up over 2.5%. On the downside, it's not a lot. Microsoft is off less than 1%, and that's the biggest weight on the downside. Amazon as well, down 1.3. Nvidia as well. So the heavyweights are moving it a little bit, but most of them are on the red side as opposed to the green side.
Right.
That's where we are today.
All right, Chris, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.